This is Jacob Beach with the Prepper's Bunker and my beautiful wife, Mrs. Beach.
Hey guys.
And today we're here to talk about episode 5 of Alone from the History Channel. But first, I wanted to address some comments that we had from the previous commentary. The first thing that I'll address is the tracker or WSK style knife. I spent some good time with one when I was really first getting into survival with knives and stuff like that. But being that one of my true passions is comparing things and analyzing things, I started to realize that a knife could perform the multi-use tasks of a tracker-style knife without having a secondary bevel, and then it would also be able to do other things more efficiently, like slicing and whatever else. So I began doing prototypes on some other types of blades and stuff like that, and that's eventually actually how I came up with my workhorse. I wanted all the benefits of the tracker-style knife with none of the detriments. With that being said, I do realize that people can have the ability to utilize almost any tool that they've been given, whether the blade is made from stone or adamantium. People can make it work. So although before the other day I really never met anyone who used and liked a tracker, I realize that people are out there, and if you really use it a lot and you really like it, more power to you. If you can compare it to some other knives, maybe you'll change your mind, maybe you won't. That's the path that I went down. So the next issue that I want to address is how we handled Brant's departure in the last episode. I have to say that both my father and I are military-minded, military people. Both of us have experience dealing with soldiers. And I know that my dad had called him a sick call ranger. What that means is someone who always is trying to get out of doing work by going to the hospital for having a cold or whatever else. And so often you would see a soldier, usually a private, say that he was sick the morning before a 12-mile ruck march or something like that. And you would see a lot of similar, they would act in a similar way. So it's very possible that Brant just rubbed my father and I the wrong way. And the other thing about the situation is when I have guest speakers, I'm going to let them speak their piece, because having a guest speaker gives us variety. It gives the show something new. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. If you hate it, scroll on or do whatever you want to do, but we'll have some variety and it'll be a good time.
And my favorite part of this series is seeing the contestants making their situations better. They're doing what they have to do, and they're not just moping. And we didn't really see Brant advance at all as far as making his shelter better. It was day 5 or 6 and he still had the same shelter. So I was kind of disappointed with Brant.
The bottom line is, my goal is not to make fun of anyone in this series. And I felt very strongly about Brant. And that's how it came out for that episode. And, we'll move on from here and see how the rest of the contestants do.
Yeah.
Alright, so this episode was Dustin's episode, and we're going to talk about him first, and we'll talk about Lucas last to make sure you guys stick around. Now, what we want to see at the Prepper's Bunker Outdoors is we want to see every competitor perform at their highest level. But that's not what this show is all about. This show also has a very unique mental aspect from the History Channel. It makes it very interesting, and that's what we're seeing a lot of at first.
Now with Dustin in this episode, everything started off very positive. Positive attitude, beautiful weather, happy with his location. But unfortunately, things started turning to the worst for him.
They did. In our last commentary, I had mentioned that he said you gotta be careful what you wish for, and
or you might just get it.
Or you might just get it, right? And his motivation for being there seemed a little bit off to me. He said he wasn't there for the competition or to compete with the other people, but with himself, and to find himself and to find his place in nature. I felt like every man's place is at home with his wife, and I think on the inside every man knows that. So what I started to see in this episode was that he began to realize that that wasn't a good motivation to be there, and maybe he came for the wrong reason. And he actually said something along the lines of he came to prove this to himself, and that's just not a reason to go. So I think Dustin had a lot to offer as far as survival, but I think Dustin might have needed another person there with him to really bring that out. You know, he mentioned he was alone, there's no one to tell him what to do, this, that, or the other thing. I think if there was someone else there, even if they weren't a survival expert, that they could have brought the best out of Dustin, and he could have really thrived out there. But I think he was a little bit out of his element, didn't have quite what he needed, and I think, I think it was just a little combination of things that ended up having him tap out.
Now, I do have a question for Dustin. And my question is, if he would have known that there were only 4 other guys out there besides himself, if he would have chose to stay out there a little bit longer, because he was in a pretty good situation. He didn't say that he was hungry, he didn't say that he was cold, he didn't really say that he was uncomfortable. And I'm wondering if he would have known that there were that many guys have already left, if he would have stayed out there longer, or if that it didn't matter. He was just, he wanted to go.
Well, he mentioned that the number of days or competitors didn't really matter to him. And me, personally, I'm such a competitive person that if the History Channel told you every time someone else quit, I would get that extra boost of confidence, and that would help me. But maybe for Dustin, that's just not, it's not why he was there. Maybe it would have helped, maybe it wouldn't have. So that's interesting. So Sam is, obviously, if you've been watching, one of our favorite competitors, or one of the people that we think has had the best chances for winning. In this episode, we see him doing well. In the storm, he actually explains a bit of the storm instead of just talking about how scared he was. Mm-hmm. In the beginning, his shelter probably wasn't set up too well for the storm. He tied it down a little bit more. And more importantly, in the storm, he realized that he needed to do some reinforcement. I worked for a guy for a while, and he asked me if I knew when the best time to realize that you're doing something wrong was. I said, I don't know. He said, as soon as possible. So my daddy mentioned that he didn't really like Sam's shelter, and that's fine, because Sam has the ability to see what he needs to fix and to fix it. That's really important. That's really good. Mm-hmm. We saw him eating some crabs. I'd like to know whether he ate them whole or not. I wish they would have played a little more of that, and I'm kind of interested in that. He was eating some bull kelp, but I think at this point, Sam's going to have more and more difficulty being away from his family.
Right, and Sam had said that he's not really a sentimental or sensitive guy who just tries to be goofy. And that's the side of Sam that we've seen so far. Mm-hmm. We've seen the goofy, the happy.
Right.
But this episode, we got to see a little bit of his emotional side, that he's having a hard time being away from his wife. And his wife is pregnant. That's going to add a lot of stress, because he wants to be there for his wife, and him not being home, that it's a lot harder. And I'm sure it's harder on his wife too, doing all that stuff on her own. She's a strong woman.
Yeah. Well, and having not eaten or drank for a while and being outside of your comfort zone for a certain amount of time really makes your mental state more difficult. When you're hungry, when you're thirsty, right, when you're tired, when you're uncomfortable. Now, Sam has a lot of experience with this, but he has more to deal with now, because now he has a wife and she's pregnant. Like you're saying, it's a pretty big deal. Right. Before I was thinking that Sam I actually preferred Sam for winning the show. I think that Sam might be defeated by his wife, by himself, by dealing with all of this.
By being away from his family. Of
course, he still has a big chance along with everybody else, but I'm starting to get the feeling that, he's in a difficult position mentally with his situation, with his family to survive out there, and how much is seeing your firstborn baby worth?
Right.
I don't know.
And something else that Sam mentioned, which is why I still feel like he has the ability to win, is that he said a part of him just wanted to lay in a shelter and mope around, and the other part wanted to go get food. And he chose to be active, to go get some food and keep his mind active, not moping, and that's why I think that Sam still has a really good chance.
But you'll notice that is very positive in keeping him working, but even when he was trying to eat, he broke down a little bit more.
That's
again.
true.
I mean, he's really struggling in this episode. I'm really rooting for Sam. But he's in a difficult situation. He's got a lot to deal with. And, he said that his days are numbered.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly how many days that is or what exactly that means to him at that moment. But we're still rooting for him. And it's kind of hard knowing that they all know the outcome and we don't.
Yeah.
So, all right, so Allan's a big guy. 240 pounds, over 6 foot tall. And, he says he's down to eating 2 meals a day. 2 meals a day isn't bad, depending on what they are. I'm guessing that Allan's going to lose some weight. I'm guessing that everybody's losing weight. That's not specific to him. There are times when Allan seems a little bit more irritated than others, of course. Sometimes he's in a little lighter mood, sometimes a little bit darker. He mentioned that he was getting a little grouchy, I think he said, which was
a little crabby.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. But it shows him making a sharpening stone. He's still out there working, and he gets himself to singing, which I'm sure brings his mood up. So
that's my thing. Is there anything that Allan can't do? Because we've seen him cook, and now he's singing. And it was pretty good.
Really, Allan needs his own cooking show.
Sure.
Or survival show. Either way, I'd watch. And I don't watch cooking shows. All right, so episode 4 left us with a bit of a cliffhanger with Mitch. He was eating his big old salmon in his tent, and we believe that he had a cougar follow him and stalk him a little bit around his tent and stuff like that. And I was impressed with what Mitch did. Although, one of the first things that I ever learned was you don't eat where you sleep. I think what that really goes to show is that no matter how much you know about survival, there's always more to learn.
Right. And
sometimes you have to learn the hard way. So I'm sure that Mitch figured this out at that point. He's still growing, and we're all growing. But regardless, I like how he handled the situation. He stayed relatively calm. He zipped up. He ended up going to sleep. He was ready to do what he had to do, if you can be ready for that. And he just realized that it's going to come when it's going to come, or it's not. He zipped up. He was fine in the morning. And then the next good thing is that instead of being ruled over by fear, he realized that he had something to do and decided he's going to go work on the shelter a little bit. So Mitch was a little bit wound up by this experience, but he did what I think Mitch does best. He stayed calm, he thought about it, and he acted. And that's very impressive.
Yeah. And he took a crappy situation and used it for his benefit.
Yep.
So
he found some bear scat. And these black bears do mostly eat berries. There's a couple things that I think about that. Well, for one, the bears eating mostly berries, they're black bears. They're going to be terrifying up close. if they're angry, but they're not even really primarily carnivores, at least not for big game. A lot of those black bears will eat primarily berries. Well, that shows me that there are berries around. Obviously, if the bear can poop out that many berries, they're around.
Those berries,
they're
yeah.
around. I've always been told that bears that eat berries are the most delicious, and I'm not going to say that I would go native and go spear a bear, although in my mind I'd like to think that I would. But if there's something that he could do in the long run, a trap, a spear pit, you know, a spring spike, whatever he needs to make, and he could get one of those bears and figure out how to do a smokehouse, if he knows what he's doing, he could have a bear hide, he could have enough food for the next month and a half, and it would be good food. That's really a resource. How you harvest that resource by yourself in the most efficient manner, I don't know. But he knows, he's got a couple advantages. He knows where the bear is walking. He might know where it lives. He knows what it's eating. So he has the advantage being a person and being able to think those things through. So hopefully we'll see him come out of this with a bear hide with a bear head hat there. It'd be sweet.
That would be cool.
Alright, so if you've been waiting to hear about Lucas, here we go. To start off, I am so impressed by that canoe. That's cool.
That was very cool.
Whether it was the best idea, whether it was the worst idea, whether he should have worked on other things, his confidence is boosted and he's in good spirit, and that means almost everything. That's great. You know, I can't talk much about the emotional side of this episode for Lucas. I'm uncomfortable with all of that, and so I have to kind of take a step back from that. But this was an impressive episode for him. What did you think?
Well, the canoe was just awesome. How cool.
No doubt.
His idea of possibly moving his camp to a closer to the beach, or even finding a different spot on the island by boat. That's a really neat idea, and you know, I really hope we get to see him using his boat, and that it turns out to be a very successful tool for him. He is having a hard time emotionally, and I mean that's rough. That can really bring him down, and it has been. But like you said, with the boat working, that's going to be a huge accomplishment. It is a huge accomplishment. And he did say, if I can get this boat to float, I'll walk away with my head up. And Lucas repeatedly said in this episode that he wants to do something great. That's a lot of pressure. He's putting a lot of pressure on himself. Doesn't really seem necessary.
Yeah.
You know, just being on the show is an accomplishment.
Well, and by making this boat, he's also kind of opening him up for kind of a more dangerous situation for survival. Because like he mentioned, yes, if the boat sinks wherever he's going to be in the water, has to worry about hypothermia. What if he gets caught in a current? Just pulled out to nowhere. I mean, the boat tracks a little bit, and it's very cool, but with a paddle that might not be the best and a boat that might not be the best, if you find yourself in a bad situation, you could really find yourself in a bad situation.
Yeah.
And storms can come up quick, tides can change, whirlpools can come up. So, you know, personally I would have worked on the shelter first, you know, but he's doing this as a way to gather food. I hope that he does get food through this. That's huge. Hopefully the situation doesn't get too rough with the boat. All in all, from the skills that he's showed, I've been very impressed. He has a little bit more difficulty with failure. You know, he said that he didn't want to be a loser. He batoned or batoned through that cedar post and kind of had a breakdown when it didn't turn out the way he wanted it to. And I'm afraid that as he gets more and more hungry and tired and lonely, that maybe these breakdowns could become worse for him. But all in all, I mean, the guy's got skills. I got to give it to him. He's doing really well out there, and it's really cool.
So I have a question for all of our viewers, and I personally am torn between choosing to have a shelter that's in the woods and choosing to have a shelter on the shoreline. You know, with Sam's shelter, storms would be rougher because there is nothing.
Wind block.
Yeah, there's no wind block. Whereas a shelter in the woods, you do have a wind block, but you do have to worry about falling trees.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm torn. I can't decide yet what I would do. I guess I'm just going to have to keep watching and make up my mind. But my question is for all of you, is what would you do for your shelter? Would you have it on the shoreline by the beach, or would you have it tucked away in the woods? And if you would like to also include what shelter you would build, I'm interested to see what all you guys come up with and say.
Absolutely. Also, you know, let us know who you think will win. Let us know what you think about individual characters, who you think has an advantage in what areas, and we'll have a discussion about it. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe, keep watching, like, comment, and most importantly, share. We're a small channel. We're trying to grow. So just, you know, share it however you can. And we're just thankful to have you here with us.
Thanks for watching.
Have a great day.